Welcome back to a brand new Big 14 Football Week 2 review and Week 3 preview here on the 11th of September 2023. College football has completed another week of football, and to say there was an upset or two is a bit of an understatement. Several programs across the country had big wins, some had even bigger losses, Alabama, in the second week of the season. Big Ten football was no exception to this, as the conference had its fair share of surprises this week as well. Here is a quick look back at final scores from Week 2 in the Big Ten. Indiana defeated Indiana State 41-7. Kansas defeated Illinois 34-23. Purdue defeated Virginia Tech 24-17. Number 22, Colorado, easily took care of Nebraska 36-14. Number 5, Ohio State defeated Youngstown State 35-7. Penn State defeated Delaware 63-7. Iowa defeated Iowa State 20-13 in a closely contended Cy-Hawk Trophy game. Number 2, Michigan defeated UNLV 35-7. Michigan State defeated Richmond 45-14. Northwestern won their first game of the season, surprisingly easily disposing of UTEP 38-7. Maryland defeated Charlotte 38-20. Rutgers defeated Temple 36-7. Minnesota defeated Eastern Michigan 25-6. And Washington State defeated number 19 Wisconsin 31-22. With the 2023 season well underway, several players are starting to fill out their stat sheets with some impressive numbers. The Big Ten always has its fair share of statistical standouts week in and week out, and Week 2 was no exception. Here is a quick look back at some of the Week 2 stat leaders, both on offense and defense. Plus, Big 14 Football will announce its Big 14 Player of the Week for Week 2. Michigan State quarterback Noah Kim was the top Big Ten quarterback this past weekend. Kim and the Spartans took on the Richmond Spiders in East Lansing, with the quarterback going 18 for 22 for 292 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy was runner-up to MSU's Kim this week. McCarthy went 22 for 25 for 278, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Minnesota running back Darius Taylor was the top running back in the Big Ten in Week 2. Taylor had 193 rushing yards with 1 touchdown against Eastern Michigan, while Rutgers running back Kyle Monagal had 165 yards and 1 touchdown against the Temple Owls. Ohio State wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. was the top wideout in the Big Ten in Week 2 with 160 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns against the Penguins of Youngstown State. Indiana wide receiver Omar Cooper Jr. had the second highest total in Week 2 with 101 yards receiving against the Sycamore of Indiana State. Defense wins championships, and the Big Ten had a couple defensive standouts in Week 2. Maryland linebacker Jay Sean Barham was the standout this past weekend. 4 solo tackles, 2 tackles for losses, and 2 sacks against Charleston, while Northwestern linebacker Xander Muller had an equally, maybe even more impressive day. Muller had 5 solo tackles, 1.5 tackles for a loss, 1 sack, 1 pass defended, and 1 interception against the University of Texas El Paso. Big 14 would like to announce the Player of the Week for Week 2, and the Big 14 Player of the Week goes to Michigan State quarterback Noah Kim with an impressive outing against Richmond. Kim's almost 300-yard day with 3 passing touchdowns and 0 interceptions earns him Player of the Week honors for Week 2. Week 3 is quickly approaching, and teams across the Big Ten have started to release injury reports from Week 2. Big 14 football has scoured the internet trying to find the most up-to-date injury reports for every team in the Big Ten ahead of their Week 3 matchups, and here is the Big 14 injury report. Illinois is reporting one player on IL this week, listed as day-to-day with an undisclosed injury. Indiana has 6 players on the IL, mostly on offense, and most are listed as day-to-day with undisclosed injuries. Iowa is reporting 8 players on IL. 1, Jay Harris, is out indefinitely. The rest are listed as day-to-day with undisclosed injuries. 13.
You what?
Maryland players are on IL this week, mostly offense, a few defensive players as well, all listed as day-to-day with undisclosed injuries. Michigan has 10 players to announce on the injured list this week, mostly offensive players, all listed as day-to-day with undisclosed injuries. Michigan State also has 10 players on IL this week, mostly defensive players with a couple offensive players. All are listed as day-to-day with undisclosed injuries. 8 Golden Gophers from Minnesota are on the IL this week, mostly defensive, all listed as day-to-day with undisclosed injuries. Nebraska has only 2 players on IL this week. Quarterback Jay Sims is one of them. Both players are listed as day-to-day, and one is with an ankle injury. The other is an eligibility issue. Northwestern has 10 players.
You what?
On IL this week to report, mostly on offense. 1 player is out indefinitely. The other 9 are listed as day-to-day with undisclosed injuries. Ohio State reports 7 players on IL this week, a mix of offensive and defensive players, all listed as day-to-day with undisclosed injuries. Penn State has 10 players on IL, mostly on offense. All are listed as day-to-day with undisclosed injuries. Purdue is reporting 3 players on IL, 1 defensive, 2 offensive, and all are listed as day-to-day with undisclosed injuries. Rutgers has 6 players on IL this week, mostly on offense. All are listed as day-to-day with undisclosed injuries. The Badgers from Wisconsin have 9 players on IL, a mix of offensive and defensive players. 4 are listed as out, 2 are probable, and 3 are listed as day-to-day, all with a variety of injuries. Some big news out of the Big Ten this past weekend. It was announced shortly after Michigan State's win over Richmond by ESPN that MSU football coach Mel Tucker was under investigation following a report of sexual harassment against a former rape survivor. Big 14 football has been following the breaking news as it has been reported all weekend long, with a new report coming out today, Monday, September 11th, by Sarah Smart of CNN. Michigan State announced Sunday the head football coach Mel Tucker has been suspended any and all of his coaching duties without pay. According to a USA Today report published Saturday night, Tucker is alleged to have made sexual comments and masturbated while on a phone call with Brenda Tracy, an advocate and rape survivor. CNN has not independently verified the details of the USA Today report. CNN reached out to Tracy and her attorney on Sunday, but has not heard anything back. CNN also reached out to Tucker's agent following the announcement of his suspension, but has not heard anything back. During Tucker's suspension, secondary coach Harlan Barnett will fill in as acting head coach, and former MSU head football coach Mark D'Antonio will be back as an associate head coach. Week 3 in college football is fast approaching, and we here at Big 14 Football will take a look ahead at this week's Big 10 games, a couple in-conference games this week to announce, plus a top 10 matchup Saturday evening. Here is the Week 3 slate of games for the Big 10, plus Big 14 predictions for every Big 10 matchup this week. Virginia, 0-2 on the year, takes on Maryland, who's undefeated at 2-0. Maryland wins this one 31-17. Number 7 Penn State, who is 2-0, takes on Illinois, 1-1. Number 7 Penn State wins this one easily, 33-10. Louisville, who is 2-0, takes on Indiana, who is 1-1. Louisville wins in a close one, 28-24. Georgia Southern, who is 2-0, will take on Wisconsin, who is 1-1 on the year. Wisconsin wins this one fairly easily, 35-17. Northwestern, who's 1-1, will take on ranked number 21 Duke, who is 2-0. Duke wins this one in a close matchup, 28-24. Minnesota, who's 2-0 on the season, takes on number 20 North Carolina, who's also undefeated at 2-0. North Carolina wins this one easily, 38-14. Virginia Tech, who's 1-1, takes on Rutgers, who's undefeated at 2-0. Rutgers wins a very close one, 23-21. Western Michigan, who sits at 1-1 on the year, takes on number 25 Iowa, who's 2-0. Number 25 Iowa wins this one in a close one, 21-17. The Hilltoppers from Western Kentucky, who are 2-0, take on the number 6 Ohio State Buckeyes. The Buckeyes beat the shit out of the Hilltoppers and win 38-7. Number 8, Washington, who's 2-0, visits Michigan State this weekend, who's also 2-0. Number 8, Washington runs over the Spartans, 35-10. Northern Illinois, who's 1-1 on the year, plays Nebraska, who hasn't won a game yet. Nebraska wins their first one, 28-17. Bowling Green, who's 1-1, takes on number 2 Michigan, who's undefeated at 2-0. Michigan runs away with this one, 38-3. Syracuse, who's 2-0, takes on Purdue, who's 1-1. Syracuse wins this in a close one, 21-20. The best players in college football ultimately fight for the honor of being called the best in America, and with that goes several accolades and awards. One such award is the Heisman Trophy, awarded to the top college player in all of the land. Here is an updated look at the Heisman Trophy race, and Big 14 football has its top 5 Heisman hopefuls going into Week 3. The number 1 Heisman Trophy candidate is USC quarterback Caleb Williams, a 92.1 quarterback rating with 13 total touchdowns on the year, 878 passing yards, and a 3-0 record. Next up, Arizona State. Number 2, Washington quarterback Michael Penix Jr. with a 91.7 quarterback rating, 9 touchdowns on the year, 859 passing yards with a 73.1 completion percentage. 409 yards came last weekend. Next up, Michigan State. Number 3, this is the third best Heisman hopeful, Florida State quarterback Jordan Travis. 7 total touchdowns, 575 passing yards, 58 yards rushing. A 2-0 record in 2023. Next up, BC. The number 4 Heisman Trophy candidate I have is Colorado quarterback Shadir Sanders, an 83.7 quarterback rating with 7 touchdowns and 903 passing yards already. Complement that with a 77.5 completion rate and a 2-0 record in 2023 has Colorado humming along nicely. Next up, Colorado State. Our number 5 Heisman Trophy candidate is Notre Dame quarterback Sam Hartman, an 89.8 quarterback rating with 11 total touchdowns on the year, 731 passing yards, a 3-0 record for the Irish in 2023. Next up this weekend, Central Michigan. Our 2 candidates on the outside looking in, Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy, 95.3 quarterback rating, only 5 touchdowns and 558 passing yards on the year. Also, Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers is on the outside looking in, 6 total touchdowns, 609 passing yards, with 63% of those passes being completed. That is the end of Big 14 football. Thank you for tuning in this week. Be sure to tune in next week for an updated inside look to the Big 10 and what happened in Week 3 and a look ahead to Week 4.